Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to welcome you all to this seminar that the NIS National Insurance Department is assisting us with to give us a good idea of some aspects of national insurance, which we either have a very vague idea about or have some incorrect preconceived notions about. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Mrs. Norma King-Brathwaite, who is the Assistant Director of Benefits. This seminar has been a long time in coming. We've been trying to organize this for some time, and I'm sure that you will gain quite a bit from this session. And afterwards, we will have a little question and answer session. So you will be able to find out things about our pension, NIS, calculations, retirements, and all of those things that you've been thinking about but not sure about. So without further ado, I would like to hand this session over to Ms. Norma King-Brathwaite. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I thank you all for attending. I'm hoping that the end of this presentation, you will be more knowledgeable, basically, about the NIS and your entitlements. Let me apologize. My colleague, Claudette Moore, will not be attending today's session. So about the NIS, what we need to be aware of is that the NIS is governed under the legislation, the Act of Cap 47, and was established on the 5th of June, 1967, to provide a system of benefits for insured persons. An insured person, as defined by the NIS, is under these various categories. It is the employed and the self-employed, and they must be insured under the Act. And it's those persons 16 years, over 16 and under pensionable age who are covered for sickness, maternity, unemployment, employment injury, invalidity benefits, and pensions. The old age contributor and non-contributor. The old age contributor, sorry. It is also persons under 16 years of age or over pensionable age who are covered for employment injury. And that is the only category you're covered for under that age range. 16, under 16, and over pensionable age. Now, there's always this question about the payment of NIS. Things are hard. I am unable to pay my contributions because. But as you can see here from this slide, the minimum per week you can pay contributions on is $21, or a minimum per month of $91 per week.
Mrs. King-Brathwaite, sorry to interrupt you here. Right, your slides. Right now it's showing the death benefit screen. It's not rolling over to the other slides that you're speaking on.
So you're not seeing the screen I'm seeing right now?
No, I'm just seeing the slides at this side, but the major one that's up is the one that says death benefit.
Oh, I do not know how to.
If anything, you can email it to Yvette and she will share her screen if it's not working for you.
I send it to Juliana.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
What are you seeing right now?
The same thing. Just click slideshow from your screen. Start slideshow.
Give me a moment, please.
Everyone, just give us a few seconds to get this sorted out. We apologize.
Okay, what are you seeing now?
Same thing.
That's strange.
Have a monitor along with your laptop.
Yes.
Oh, but you have to click you have to click which one you want to share.
You're still seeing the same thing, or are you now seeing?
We're not seeing anything at all right now. Seeing you.
Display settings.
Once you share the screen, just
Right.
go to the share screen.
Yes, that's where I'm at right now.
Right, and then click on the presentation.
I'm going to reopen again because I just closed it. Let me reopen.
Press share screen because we're still seeing you.
All right, let me go there. Share screen.
Okay, and then good. Now press good. Yes.
So you're seeing now.
Cooking with gas.
Okay. All right. Let me start again. My apologies. Okay. About the NIS. The NIS is governed under the CAP 47 legislation, which was established on the 5th of June, 1967, to provide a system of benefits to insured persons. An insured person, you may ask, is all persons who are employed or self-employed who should be or must be submitting their contributions to the NIS. I say should be because all self-employed persons right now do not contribute to the NIS scheme. And this is an area we are trying to concentrate on to ensure that persons are covered when they become vulnerable. It also covers persons 16 years over or under pensionable age for the following benefits: sickness, maternity, unemployment, employment injury, invalidity benefits, old age contributory pensions. Those are the pensions covered, disablement, which we will go through very shortly. And for persons under 16 and over pensionable age, you are only covered for employment injury only. Now, insurable earnings. Most of the time, we find persons giving us excuses such as they didn't make enough to contribute to the NIS. But as you can see here, you can pay on a minimum of $21 a week or $91 monthly, up to a maximum of $1,126 weekly, or a maximum of $4,880 monthly. And as you can see here, this slide shows you a breakdown of the various areas for which your contributions, when submitted, would be categorized. You see a category for permanent government employees. You see a government slide for temporary government employee, and under the private sector / state-owned and state-owned enterprises, you have contributions there. Now, the contributions are broken down into a portion paid by the employee and a portion paid by the employer. So for the private sector, you will see that the employee pays 11.10% of their earnings. The employer pays 12.7% of that amount, up to the maximum contributions as stated before, for a total of 23.85 percentage points for those persons in the private sector. You will see that rate varied for a permanent government employee as well as a temporary government employee, which is much lower. Now, the benefits provided here, as I would have indicated earlier, they're into two categories here: sickness, maternity grant, employment injury, medical and traveling expenses, and unemployment falls under the short-term arm. And for long-term, you get your pensions, old age contributory pension or grant, non-contributory pension or grant, invalidity pension or grant, disabled pension or grant, survivor's pension or grant, or what is called your death benefit. Now, accredited contribution, and you will hear this term coming up in between from time to time. But if a person is awarded a credited contribution, it is awarded for each week during which you are paid a benefit, as long as the period runs from a Monday to a Saturday. So you submit a claim to the NIS, and once it's determined that you're entitled to a benefit from a Monday to a Saturday, a credit will be awarded to you. The credited contribution is used to help you to qualify for a benefit, and it is also used in the calculation of your pension. Credited contributions take precedence over any contributions paid by your employer for that same week. Now, pension reform. The NIS went through pension reform in 2020. And coming out of that reform, we increased contribution rates between 2003 and 2006. And we increased our pensionable age by 6 months every 4 years, commencing from the 1st of January 2006 until January of 2018. As a result of that, you can see the timelines here. So between January 2010 and 2013, pensionable age increased to 66, because previously it was 65. From January 2014 to December 2017, it increased to 66.5. And finally, at January 2018, it was 67 years of age. Now, as a result of pension reform, we introduced what is called flexible retirement or voluntary retirement, or also called late retirement. As a result of that, persons can apply for pension between 60 and 66.5, which is considered early retirement or voluntary retirement. You have your pensionable age at 67, and you have those persons who can apply for a late pension between pensionable age, after pensionable age, which is 68, and up to an age of 70 years. As a result of that, there is a 0.5% increase for those persons who decide to wait until after pensionable age, between 68 and 70 to apply. That equates to 6% annually that will be added for every year you're later than pensionable age. For those persons who submit their applications for early retirement, there is a 0.5% or 6% annual deduction that is made for every year earlier than pensionable age. Changes also included the calculation of the old age contributory benefit for those persons who fall under the new basis of calculation. And it's seen here, 2% for every 50 contributions up to the first 1,000, 1.25% for every 50 contributions up to a maximum of 60%. And we will see this more in the calculations further in the slides. In addition to pension reform, the following took effect from the 31st of December, 2002. Persons 56 years or older, their pension will be calculated on what is called the old basis. Persons between 47 years or older, but less than 56 years, their pension will be on a half and half basis, half of the old calculation and half of the new calculation. And persons under the age of 47 years, as at the 31st of December, 2002, their calculation will be based on the new basis of calculation. Now, the old age contributory pension, which is the widely known pension and the one that is questioned most. In order to qualify for this benefit, you must have at least 500 contributions paid or credited, that word that we just discussed earlier, credited, of which 150 must be paid contributions. You must have reached pensionable age or early retirement or late retirement. Early retirement being, as I indicated earlier, 60 to 66 and a half. Pensionable age, which is currently 67, or late pension, which is from 67, that's a typo there, my apologies, 68, sorry, to age 70 years. Now, the calculation under the old basis for persons who are 56 years before December 31st, 2002. Now, it is based on the average insurable earnings of the best 5 years. So basically, we look at your employment history, we look at your best 5 years, and the average is taking those best 5 years and dividing it by 5. It takes into account 40% of the average annual insurable earnings and 1% of the total insurable earnings after the first 500 contributions. And as I would have indicated, it looks at your entire contribution history when we're doing the calculation for the old age contributory benefit. Now, here's an example of the old basis. If you have, for instance, 37 years of contributions, which equates to 1850, my apologies. And total earnings of the best 5 years being 150,000. To get your average, you divide it by 5 to get 30,000. You look at the total earnings after your first 500 contributions, which is, as I said, you're looking at your contribution history for this calculation. And we're using this example of 5,550, 800. The basic pension would be 40% of the average insurable earnings, as indicated previously. And your supplemental will be based on the total average after the 500. You'll take 1% of that. Those two sums are added together and divided by 52 to get your weekly pension. Now, the calculation under the new basis, and this is for persons under 47 years as at December 31st, 2002. This pension is capped at 60% of your average insurable earnings. All pensions, I must say here, are capped at 60% of your average insurable earnings, and we'll not go over that amount. This calculation is based on 2% for every 50 contributions up to the first 1,000, plus 1.2% for every 50 contributions after the first 1,000 contributions. Our basic example we're using from our previous calculation, where we have 1850, which equates to 37 years. Total earnings for the best 5 years, we determined at 150, and the average was determined at 30,000. We still have our first 500 contributions at 550,800. For this calculation, the basic pension is calculated by taking 50 for every 1,000 times 2% times the average insurable earnings, which gives you $12,000. Your supplementary, which would be the balance of the 1850 contributions that we would have seen before, 50 of that times 1.25% of the average insurable earnings, these amounts are added together, divided by 52, and capped at 60%. So the higher of the two is prevailing. So the lower of the two is prevailing here, sorry. But once it's based on 60%, so your weekly pension will be $346.15. Now the 50-50 basis calculation, which is based on persons who are older than 47 but younger than 56 as at the 31st of December 2002. This is also capped at 60% and is based on the calculation of the half of the old basis, which we would have seen earlier, and half of the new basis. So for this calculation, since we would have made our determination, we're using the same variance we had previously, as seen here. We will take half of the old basis, which was calculated before, of $336.67, which equates to $168.35, and half of the new basis, which we calculated earlier, based on $346.50, which is $173. Those two are added together and you get your weekly pension. Now, minimum pension currently is $243 per week, and the maximum is $668.74 per week. The old age contributory grant. Now, if you don't have the required contributions to qualify for an old age contributory pension, you are paid an old age contributory grant based on the contributions you have with us. But one of the requirements is that you have at least 50 contributions to be eligible. And you must be at pensionable age to be entitled to this. So a person submitting an application for early retirement will not be paid an old age contributory grant if they do not qualify for an early pension. This amount is basically a lump sum and is equal to 6 weeks average insurable weekly earnings for each 50 contributions actually paid or credited to an insured person's account. So the calculation of the total number of weeks, contribution weeks being 393, and the number of 50s that we get from that total is 7, and it calculates the multiples of 50 in the total number of contribution weeks divided by 50. Non-contributory old age pension. This is usually for persons who would not have contributed or do not meet the requirements of an old age contributory pension. So this was tailored more towards housewives previously. And it is not an automatic payment. In order to qualify, you must be a citizen or permanent resident of Barbados and must have reached pensionable age. If you are blind or deaf mute and age 18 or older, or must not be in receipt of a government or social security pension that is higher. For citizens, you must be 12 years since attaining the age of 40, or an aggregate of 20 years since attaining the age of 18. And for permanent residents, 15 years since attaining the age of 40, or an aggregate of 20 years since attaining the age of 18. This benefit is currently paid at $230 per week and is determined by the Ministry of Finance. Invalidity benefit. Now, this benefit is paid to persons who are incapable of work as a result of a specific disease or bodily or mental disablement, which is likely to remain permanent. You must be under pensionable age to qualify, and you must have at least 150 contributions paid to be determined. Now, this paper similarly is issued by your physician and not issued by the NIS. So similarly, when you go to your your doctor, sorry, and he determines that you're ill and you should get some time off, he will determine if you are permanently incapable of work and should be issued with an invalidity form, which is usually a green form. This calculation is based on 40% of the average insurable earnings plus 1% of the total insurable earnings after the first 500 contributions. In our example here, we will see that we have indicated here our best 5 years being 2013, 2015, and 2016, giving us a total of 88,800. The aggregate earnings after the first 500 contributions we will determine to be 145,500. In our calculation, we find 88,800, and this is divided by the best 3 years as opposed to the old age contributory, which is on the best 5 years. So it's divided by 3 to get your average insurable earnings. You take 40% of that total, and your total earnings, as we determine after 500 contributions to be 145,500, we take 1% of that, add the 2 together, the 40% and the 1%, to determine your annual pension, and you divide that by 52 to get your weekly pension. Disablement benefit. Most of the time, there's usually a misunderstanding between the invalidity or some level of confusion between invalidity benefits and disablement benefits. Now, for the disablement benefit, you must suffer some form of loss or physical or mental loss of physical or mental faculty as a result of an employment-related accident. You must be assessed by a certified medical practitioner at 1% or more disabled. So this form is issued by the NIS. You complete the form, you submit the form. What will happen there? We will get one of our medical panel of doctors to see you, and a determination is made based on that assessment. If that assessment is between 1% to 29%, you're paid what is called a grant. If your assessment is 30% or more, you're paid a weekly pension. Disablement benefit is calculated based on the rate of the employment injury. So once we've determined that you were injured on the job, that rate will be based on the employment injury. This one benefit is duplicated with a number of other benefits. So depending on your determination, you can receive this benefit along with one of the other benefits except invalidity benefits. It may be payable for life if your assessment is final and it is 30% or greater. And it's payable for periods during which the claimant is working. So this is the benefit here that you can work depending on your percentage of disablement and receive. Survivor's benefit. This benefit is usually paid to a surviving spouse and children should there be a death. You must have at least 150 contributions paid or have been in receipt of an invalidity or old age contributory pension. Survivor's benefit is paid to the spouse and the children of the deceased. And where the spouse qualifies for a pension in his own right, that pension being higher will be paid over the particular benefit. So for instance, if you were in receipt of a survivor's pension and you are currently reaching pensionable age and you submit your application for old age contributory pension and the survivor's pension continues to be higher, that is the pension you will continue to receive, and vice versa. And this benefit will cease when you remarry or cohabitate with anyone. Now, entitlements for the spouse, if you are 50 years or older when the spouse died, or you are married for at least 3 years, you are entitled to half of the pension. This benefit is also open to common law relationships. So there are additional information that you would need to provide us before we make a determination on your application. So it's not only tied to marriage. If you were 45 years to 49 years at the time, and you were in a relationship for 3 years or more, you're entitled to a third of the pension for life. And if you're under 45 years, you're only entitled to half for 1 year. This basically shows you the windows for the various qualifications that I would have indicated previously, so that you have an idea of the categories for which you fall. For children, each child is entitled to a sixth of the benefit up to age 16, or up to an age of 25 if you're in full-time education. So after 16 years of age, you're required to submit correspondence to the director indicating that the child is in full-time education at an institution approved by the director. Once that is the case and those letters continue to be received up to age 25, the child is entitled to a survivor's benefit of a third. If the child is an orphan, they're entitled to a third of the benefit up to age 16. Similarly, you supply your correspondence to us indicating that you're still in full-time education and you will continue to receive it up to age 25. If you have an invalid child, that child is entitled to the benefit for a third of the benefit, as long as the invalidity lasts or for life. Survivor's grant. This is a lump sum made to a surviving spouse or children of the deceased who would not have been entitled to an old age contributory pension, but would have received an invalidity grant or an old age contributory grant. The deceased must have had at least 50 contributions paid, and of course, less than the 150 contributions required for the survivor's pension. In this particular case, similar to the rates that I would have indicated earlier, the grant will be apportioned accordingly to the spouse and the child or children. Death benefit. Now, death benefit is paid in case there is a death due to employment injury. It is paid to the spouse, children, and a dependent of the deceased. Now, this benefit is similar to the survivor's benefit, but as would have indicated, this is tied to employment injury. So if you go to work and for the first time and something happens and to a spouse or survivor children, you'd be entitled to this benefit based on that requirement. Here, the spouse is entitled to half of the benefit for life. It ceases similarly to survivors if you remarried or cohabitate. On remarriage, a one-off lump sum will be paid equal to 52 times the weekly pension rate. For the children, 6 up to age 16 or up to 25, the same documentation is required. You produce that school letter at age 16 saying that you're continuing in full-time education, and we will continue to pay up to age 25. Similarly for orphans, a third, and similarly for an invalid, 1/3 benefit for life or until the invalidity continues. For dependents, which may be, say, a mother or so, that person receives a sixth of the pension for 1 year and ceases on remarriage or cohabitation. So it is to determine who the dependent is. Funeral grants. This is paid in respect of the death of an insured person who at the time of death was in receipt of or entitled to sickness, maternity, unemployment, invalidity, old age contributory pension. It is also paid to a person who has met or is likely to meet the cost of the funeral. It is also paid in respect of the death of a spouse of an insured person, in respect of whom a grant would have been payable, whether or not the spouse had predeceased the insured person. And that sum being paid currently is $2,185. So if you have a spouse who is not working, you are working, and that person passed, you can submit an application on your contributions, and that benefit will be paid. Now, reciprocal agreements, and this ties in mostly with our old age contributory pension or survivor's pension. There are some agreements that Barbados has signed with the UK, Canada, Quebec, and CARICOM territories. For CARICOM, these are the following territories for which we are signatories to that agreement. So where this comes in, you submit your application for pension to us. We determine that you do not meet the requirements for pension of 500 contributions at that time, but you indicate on the back of the application that you would have worked in any of the following territories or countries: United Kingdom, Quebec, Canada, the old age contributory benefit, the invalidity survivors funeral grant. These are the agreements that were signed under. So you do not have the required contributions. We can write to those territories and source your contribution history. And if that history is enough to take you to our requirement of 500, you can receive what is called a proportionate pension. For CARICOM, the only difference between the CARICOM and the other territories is the inclusion of the death benefit and the disablement benefit as seen here. As I was saying, you require at least 500 contributions to qualify here. You have 300 in Barbados, but you have 200 in Trinidad. A proportionate pension can be paid once we have determined that you have the required contributions from the other territory that will take you to the 500 required here. Basically, that's the summary of our benefits. What I would advise is that persons not wait until pensionable age to check to ensure that their contributions are being paid, that they write for access to our portal, which you can visit our website, www.nis.gov.bb, where you can write for access to the portal by providing some form of identification to us. You can scan your identification and send it along with the application, and you'll be granted access to look at your contribution history. At this point, I can take any questions for any persons who have any questions concerning the NIS. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. King-Brathwaite, for your presentation. There are just a few questions that came up in the chat while you were going through. The first one was concerning the survivor's benefit. The person wanted further clarity with regard to that payment. If the family includes wife and children, would the benefit be paid half to the wife and 1/6 per child?
Yes, as I would have indicated before, it depends on what age you are at the time of the death. So if you were 50 years or older, you're entitled to half of the amount the person would have been entitled to. If you're between 45 and 49, you're entitled to 1/3. If you're less than 45, you're only entitled to half of the amount. So with the spouse getting a half of the amount, the other half will be divided between the children. And these are children within marriage and outside of marriage. If there are more children than applicable at the time, we will deal with the oldest child first. And as the child comes off of the roll, the other children will be added.
Yes, okay, understood. Thank you. I hope that gives
Sure.
clarity to the person that was asking the question. Also, with regard to the reciprocal agreements between us and Canada, are there two agreements?
No, there is one agreement, but the agreement includes Quebec, which is one of the territories. So there is one with Quebec that covers the same benefits that I would have indicated there, which is the old age contributory, the invalidity, the survivors, and the funeral grant.
Okay.
So
thank
as
you.
I said, if you do not have enough contributions to qualify here, but you would have indicated on the back of the application that you worked in Canada, we ask for your work history, the periods that you would have worked there, and we ask you to provide your social security number for the territory. We will then write to them and ask them to provide your employment history.
Okay. All right. With regard to Trinidad, some person is asking if they've made full contributions in both Trinidad and Barbados. Are they entitled to pensions in both territories?
Well, for Barbados, for sure, once you have the 500 contributions, you are eligible for a full pension from us. There will be no need for us to source your information from Trinidad and Tobago. But it is wise for that person to make an application to the Trinidad and Tobago scheme to determine their eligibility there. But the reciprocal agreement only comes into place, as I said, if you do not have enough contributions here to qualify.
Okay, another question from the chat. Some person is asking what assistance is offered for self-employed persons who need to know more about or how to set up their contributions. Can you share any numbers or emails or contact persons that they can liaise with?
Yes, you can call the NIS and will be able to take you through the collection section. They will be able to take you through the requirements of what is required, because you have to register as a self-employed person in order to submit your contributions under that category. Our website, www.nis.gov.bb, will also provide you with information on how to proceed in registering and also proceed in how to submit your contributions, because those contributions are submitted every quarter and have their required timelines. But the website, we have plenty of information there that can assist. But you can contact us at any of the information here on the screen and we'll be able to assist.
Okay, and for confirmation, the minimum amount for self-employed persons is $21 per week or $90 per month?
$91 per month.
Yes, okay.
Up to a maximum.
The person is also asking if they submit an application for a funeral grant for their spouse based on their contributions, how would that affect their own funeral grant?
No, it has no effect on it. You will still qualify for a funeral grant under your own right. But that option is given should the spouse not be a working spouse or did not have the required contributions. We will ask you for that information and we will pay accordingly. So there's no effect there.
And I figure this will be a popular question for a lot of people. Where your employer, the retirement age at your place is 65. Do you have to wait to 67 in order to apply for your pension?
No, the option is yours if you want to apply for early retirement, because as I said, that's an option offered as a result of pension reform. You can apply between ages 60 and 66 and a half. Mind you, you cannot be employed while you are applying for that benefit. You must have been fully retired from all forms of employment, and you would indicate that on the affidavit that you have to complete to submit. But you must be mindful that there is a 6% deduction for every year you're early. And everyone who submits an application for early retirement does not qualify. So you have the option to wait until pensionable age, which is 67. Or if you submit an application for early retirement, when you sign that affidavit to say that you've retired from all forms of work, that is basically where you would get your pension based on that. Now, mind you, if you're receiving this pension and you decide to resume work, you just need to write to the director of NIS, indicating the date at which you want to resume work, and your pension will cease. The additional contributions that come in will be used in the recalculation of your pension should you retire at a later date.
Okay, thank you. And once you have decided to retire, some person is asking, what do you do when you are 65 or 67 and you're
Okay.
retired, and what do you do then to start that process?
Okay. We have applications here at the office for that purpose. You can call the department indicating that you would like to retire, or you need to find out basically an estimate of which the amount you'll be entitled to at this point in time. We can provide you with an estimate of your pension. We can mail an application to you. You can complete that application and submit it 3 months prior to pensionable age, because it gives us some time to ensure that your application goes through along with your relevant documents, that being your birth certificate, all original documents, marriage certificate, divorce decree, deed poll, should you have changed your name, the required documents we need on hand. We will update your records, give you back your documentation, and start the process of checking to ensure that, you know, everything is right for the calculation of your pension. When that is done, once you've indicated to us that you would like your pension deposited, that will be done for you and a notice sent to you indicating that such has been done.
Okay, for persons who are non-nationals and have made contributions to the NIS scheme, are they entitled to a pension?
Yes, certainly. Once they have contributed to the scheme here and they have met the contribution requirements here, you will be paid a pension. And mind you, you will be paid a pension anywhere you decide to settle. Right now, I have pensioners in Australia that I pay pension to on a monthly basis. So you just need to indicate to us where you would like your pension paid, and we try to facilitate the payment of your pensions. If you do not have enough contributions and you would have worked, as I said, in the reciprocal territory, once you've provided that information to us, we will source that information. Once you qualify, we will pay you similarly.
Okay, thank you. And for the another question for that gap between 65 and 67 years, some person is asking what happens in that gap period?
I'm not fully understanding the question.
Is there anything from NISN that is provided to the person between 65 and 67 if the person, I guess, decides to wait until 67?
If you decide to wait until age 67, there's nothing that will be provided to you until you make your application to us. So as I said, the choice is yours based on your determination when you want to receive your pension. One of the other questions that come out of that is that persons who applied for a pension at, say, 60, and they are now approaching 67, they want to know if there's going to be a recalculation of the pension. And there is no recalculation of the pension that is done. The 60% is what you receive. The only difference there is that at 67, if you care to work, you will continue to receive your pension without interruption.
Okay. All right. And a question with regard to sick leave and pension. Over your work life, you might have periods of sick leave, whether short or long. Does that affect what pension you receive once you retire?
Okay. I would have indicated earlier something called a credit, which is applied to you every time you submit, say, a sickness paper, or you are on maternity. Any payment that the NIS pays between a Monday and a Saturday you would accumulate something called a credit. And that credit is based on the calculation that would have been done for that particular week. Now, in the calculation of your pension, those credits are going to take precedence over any contributions that were paid. Because usually if a person goes on sick leave, it is not expected for the employer to pay should they submit a form to us. So those credits are applied and will be used in the calculation of your pension at pensionable age.
So any sick leave that you're saying, any sick leave that benefits that were paid will reduce the amount of pension that you are eligible for?
Well, you call it a reduction. It depends on, as I said, the rate for the credit that is applied to that period of time. As I said, you call it a reduction, but as I said, that particular credit that you would accumulate is not just for sickness. It is for those persons who go on maternity leave, those persons who are unemployed in their working history. Those benefits, those credits are applied.
Okay. I just want to be clear because I'm sure that this will probably be a hot button topic or issue for persons. So you're saying that once you would have received maternity benefits, any benefits that you would have received during your working life from the NIS, maternity benefits, sickness benefits, unemployment benefits, that those are taken into consideration once
you're paid.
Yes,
from a
once you're
Monday
paid from the NIS, those are taken into consideration.
Everyone, correct.
When the time comes to calculate your pension.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
As for instance, for unemployment, when you become unemployed, you have suffered a loss of income. Those credits that are applied for the period of unemployment where there's no income will be used in your calculation of a benefit. In that particular case, I wouldn't consider that a loss. That would be named to you, because during that period of unemployment, you would have credits applied for that period. And at pensionable age, those credits will be taken into consideration in your calculation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm just scrolling through trying to make sure I don't ask the same questions. Give me a second.
Okay, that's fine.
Juliana, I'll ask one of these questions that is here. Are you entitled to sickness benefit while on vacation leave? So it says we're still paid while on vacation. So people go on vacation, get vacation leave, and they want to know whether they're entitled to sickness benefit if they become sick when they're on vacation leave.
My understanding of the sickness element of it is that there is a part on the form that you must indicate the period for which you are on holiday. If part of that falls outside of the benefit, my understanding is that you would not be entitled to that. I can look into that further, as I said, because I have the pension aspect of it covered. My colleague, Ms. Moore, would have been here to answer that element of the question, but I can get back to you on that. But as far as my understanding goes, as it relates to the period of vacation, the question is asked to ensure that you're not paid for that period while being on sick leave. But I'll verify that for you and get back to you on that. Sickness paid during vacation.
All right, we have one here asking that, is there going to be another raise in the NIS cap? And if so, when will this take effect?
That is interesting. Well, there was discussion in the newspaper recently about pension reform for government pensioners. But I believe that there's no discussion as yet relating to any changes. When that occurs, we will be informed. But right now, as far as I'm aware, there's no discussion as it relates to any reform coming to the NIS pension as yet. You will get your usual increase in rates as announced, but as it relates to the pension reform, as it relates to NIS, I'm not privy to that at this current time.
Okay. And someone is asking, saying they've worked for 35 years, both at UE and some period of time in government. Would you get two pensions in a case like that?
Well, in the calculation of the NIS, we take your complete working history into consideration in our calculation. We also notify the government or the treasury on those persons who would have worked in government and their entitlement. What I would advise that person to do is to contact the person in the treasury, because I know there are different changes that have come about, which if you were in the service prior to, I believe, the 1st of September 1970 or 75, you were only entitled to one pension. After that, you were only entitled to, two pensions, sorry. After that, you're only entitled to one. So I would advise that person to contact someone in the Treasury Department to see what their entitlements are as it relates to the Treasury pension. But for sure, once you've submitted your application to us with the required contributions, you will be paid an NIS pension.
Thank you on that one. And the question relating to our current environment, COVID environment, some persons asking, for persons being off from work because of COVID, they say, because of COVID, do we receive or apply for a document from NIS to submit to work to our HR, seeing that most persons did not visit a medical doctor but tested positive, that was tested and is positive?
Okay, my understanding from that is if you are tested positive, you are given a document to take to your employer through the Ministry of Health, which would show that you have been released and that you're okay to resume work. As it relates to the medical certificate from the NIS, which qualifies you for benefit here, there is a form that is being sent out digitally to those persons who would have contracted COVID, for them to complete and submit digitally to the NIS. Once you've received that form and you've completed it and submit it here, we will then do the calculation to see if you're eligible or not. So basically that is what it is. The government issues the form showing that you are clear to go back out to work. That form is not for the NIS, but there is an NIS form that's sent to you digitally, which you complete and submit digitally to us.
And a question, how does retiring medically unfit affect your pension benefits?
Okay. Once you're determined to be medically unfit by your physician, he will issue you with an invalidity form, which you will complete and submit to the NIS. We will determine your eligibility based on your contributions and your ailment and you know what we need to do to make a determination. And you will receive that benefit until you determine yourself to be better. Because if you say that I can go back out to work, you can write the director, we can stop the pension. That pension, should you not be able or fit for work, will continue into pensionable age at the same rate. So at pensionable age, there will be no need for you to submit an application for old age contributory pension, because you will continue to receive that benefit at the same rate going forward into pensionable age. It would no longer be referred to as invalidity, but an old age contributory benefit at pensionable age.
Okay, So you have that up until your pensionable age, and then it goes on into your pension.
Yes, correct. At the same rate.
Yes. Some person's asking, where on the portal can you see your personal information? For example, the contributions you have made.
Yes, you have the right for access. There's a form on the portal that you can download to write for access. And when that form is completed, you submit it with your identification card, which you can upload with the form. And one of our IT techs will process that form and provide you with the necessary access.
All right, we have situations where persons might be on sick leave, and during that period, the employer continues to pay them with the expectation that the employee would return the funds once received from NIS into the employer. What happens in situations like those?
You're asking that question in light of the fact that you're expecting the person to pay you, or?
Yes, to return the funds to the employer.
Yeah, if that is the agreement, what should happen when that claim is processed? The employer should bring that information into you. As I said, if that is the agreement. Else, what I can recommend is applying for a refund of contributions for that particular period. And that is done in writing to the director of NIS for any refunds and contributions.
So the employer can write to the NIS for those funds to be refunded to the employer?
The employer can write for a refund of contributions for the period for which he pays the employee during that period. As I said, if the agreement is that the fund should be returned, the fund should be returned by the person.
Okay, so primarily the onus is on the employee to return the funds to the employer.
Yes, and for the employer to follow up with that employee, if that is the arrangement.
Okay, and with regard to the law, what is required? What is the requirement in situations where persons go on sick leave?
Well, once persons go on sick leave and a form is submitted to the director, we are to honor that application. As I said, I do not know what arrangement the employer has with the employee, but as long as the employee submits the form here and says, pay to my employer, we can pay to the employer. If the employee says to pay to them, we pay to them. Because that is an option that the employee has as well, to indicate that the funds be paid directly to the employer or to be paid directly to them to pay to the employer. That aspect of it we are not aware of. As long as the claim comes here, we honor it.
Okay.
Be it for payment or not. Because everyone who submits an application does not qualify.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm trying still to toggle some questions, sorry.
That's all right.
I have one here. Someone is asking if the employee pays NIS contributions when they're on sick leave.
Previously, well, don't let me say previously, but the understanding is once a person is on sick leave, the employer, as I said, the arrangement between the employer and employee is important. Usually in cases when an employee is on sick leave, the employer leaves it to the NIS to pay the benefit. So we honor the payment based on the claim form that is submitted. Some arrangements require that the employer will continue to pay the contributions, and when you receive your benefit, refund the employer. I cannot say there's any standard rule to suggest that this is what applies, but What I know is as soon as a form comes in, we honor it based on the instruction of the claimant. The claimant submits the form and say, pay to the employer. We submit the payment to the employer on the claimant's behalf. If the claimant says pay to us, pay to them, we pay to them. But we will accept contributions as they are submitted. And if there are cases where refunds need to be made, for instances like this, we can refund both the employer and the employee.
Another question here on how does NIS pension affect the employer's pension? Is there a link between the NIS pension and the employer's pension?
I'm a bit confused by why you refer to as the employer's pension.
If you are in a private institution who pays, and that establishment pays a pension.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying now. More than likely, some employers have their pensions tied to the NIS. So in cases like that, some employers will ask for an estimate should the person be approaching pensionable age, or if the person is in receipt of a pension, the amount the person is receiving, so that they can make a determination on their end based on an abatement of pension. In cases like that, employers write to us, but they must write with the consent from the claimant for us to release that information to them, indicating the sum at which they're going to receive at pensionable age, or if they're in receipt of a pension, what that sum is currently. So it depends on the arrangement between the claimant and the employer as it relates to their pension and if it is tied to the NIS. But yes, we have cases in point where information is requested because it is abated based on the amount or the sum that we calculate here.
And if you have a registered retirement plan, does that is it tied to the NIS, or does it impact, does one impact the other?
As I said, it will impact it from their end if it is tied to us, but if it's not tied to us, no.
Okay.
We will continue to pay our pension and you will continue to receive what is due from that end.
Okay. And also a question on mentally disabled person. If are mentally disabled adults eligible for non-contributory pension?
Well, non-contributory pension is paid under the category of you haven't contributed, you do not have the requirements to qualify for an old age contributory benefit. So we look to see if you qualify under the non-contributory arm, or if you are blind or deaf mute at age 18. And it falls under the requirements of how old you are, as I would have indicated, if you are a citizen or permanent residents. So those are the requirements for non-contributory, and not necessarily because you're suffering from a mental ailment.
All right. Some persons also asking if there's any example or demonstration of how the credits are applied in calculating the pension.
Okay. In the calculation itself, I don't have a slide with that right now. But as I said, we go through your contribution history. And what our system does currently is that it applies that credit every time you submit a benefit here that is paid between a Monday and a Saturday. So we will see your contribution history, and we will also see the credits that you would have accumulated over your life history. And the system will replace the credits for those particular weeks within your contribution history in order for you to get the calculation. So it does that application, and then we apply the calculation as I would have indicated earlier. So within your contribution history here, we show your contributions, and we also show the credits for those periods alongside your contributions. And those are placed in there and take precedence over your contributions for that particular week. So
Another question.
Go on.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, if you would have been through your employment history without submitting a claim to the NIS, your calculations would be based strictly on contributions only.
And in that case,
We have persons like that.
You would receive a higher pension?
In that particular case, you will receive a benefit based on your contribution history. Because as I said, you can't say a higher pension because there are persons that pay at the minimum for all their life to ensure that they get a pension. So there are certain persons that would either pay at $91 a month or $21 a week in order just to qualify for a pension.
Okay.
So that's why I said to term it that way, just to qualify for our minimum pension of $243 a week.
Okay, all right, okay, understood. A question here for a person who's saying, if you resign from government and applied for early retirement, but then work elsewhere, is your pension withheld until you reach full pensionable age?
If you resign early from a government agency and you now go to work for a private agency, your contributions from that private agency will be added when we make a determination for pension. As I said, we look at your complete working history. Now, if you resign from government, submit an application to us for early retirement and qualify, because everybody who submits a claim does not qualify, and you want to go back out to work in a private agency, you have to notify the director in writing of your intention to resume work. Give us a date at which you plan to resume. We will stop your pension at that point in time, and you can go and work. Should you retire for a second time, you can submit an application to us and a calculation will be done based on those additional earnings.
A question on the refund of NIS contributions. If you can, you had mentioned earlier that the employer can request a refund of NIS contributions. And some persons asking, how far back can the employer go in requesting those refunds?
Right now, I believe that is 1 year, but I have to speak to my colleague to be absolutely sure that it is indeed 1 year. But I believe you have 1 year to make your application for the required period. And that application usually comes in writing. You would indicate to the director which periods you need refunds for, because we have cases too where persons have more than one employer. They're receiving amounts over 4880, which is our maximum from both employers. And in cases like that, persons write to the director to get a refund of contributions from the employer that is paying more than the 4,800. So we have cases like that where applications do come in for a refund.
Okay.
I'll get back to you. I'll speak to my colleague about that
Okay.
to be absolutely sure I'm giving you the correct period.
And for clarification, some persons asking if there's a difference between the government pension and the NIS pension.
Well, there's going to be a difference in the calculation for that pension based on the changes that would have been made for those persons who were entitled to 2 pensions as opposed to those persons who are entitled to 1. What I know, there's an abatement process that occurs where they would request the information from us pertaining to the sums you're being paid here, and a difference is paid between what you're receiving here and what you're entitled to under the government. Those are for persons who are only entitled to 1 pension. But yes, there is a difference in the calculation as it relates to the payment of benefit.
The person's also asking how is a contribution defined? What is your definition of a contribution? And the example they're given is if they're paid monthly and contribute only once a month, do they now have to work for 41 years to qualify for a pension? To meet the 500 contribution limit?
We consider 50 weeks equates to a year of contributions.
Mhm.
So basically that is, that will give you at least some understanding on the required amount of contributions as it relates to ensuring that you have the 500 required.
So where persons are paid monthly, that 1 monthly contribution is equated to 4 weeks?
Yes, or 5 weeks, depending on how many Mondays there are in that particular month.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Understood. Persons who might want to get an idea of what their pension is possibly going to look like, is there anything on the website that would help them, or do they have to call in and make an application?
Well, there should be access to what is called our estimator. When you write for access to the portal, I can check with our IT people to make sure it is still available, but you should be able to go and get an estimate, put in your information and basically do your estimates.
Okay, so the first step is to write and ask for access
to the portal. Correct.
And you write, and that can be done on the site, or you have
there's a form on the site for that purpose that you can download. And you just need to upload that along with proof of identification. And it requires you to have an email address, and we'll be able to send you the access.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, is your NIS pension taxable?
Okay. What happens in cases of, well, let me put it this way. Every tax season, the information pertaining to the income that you received here is sent to the Treasury Department and is available when you apply for your income tax on a daily basis. I mean, on a yearly basis. So when you go in and you make your calculation, you would see the amount of income you would have received for that income year. and that income is made available. So basically for filing of income tax. As it relates to taking out tax prior to the payment of your pension, no, we do not make a deduction for taxes prior to payment. You receive what is basically calculated for you. But that information is sent to the Treasury annually, so that when you file your income tax, it is available there for you.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Further clarification on the contributions.
Mhm.
I just want to repeat what I understood you to say, because we're still getting questions on it. You're saying that for persons who contribute monthly, that monthly contribution is considered 4 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on how many Mondays are in that month.
Correct.
And then for your 500 contributions, and that for a year is 50 contributions.
Yes, we look at 50 contributions to equate to a year.
Right. So for persons working continuously on a monthly basis, essentially 10 years consistent working will give you your 500 contributions.
Correct.
Okay.
Just one clarification to remind all persons to ensure that their NIS number, that they are in receipt of an NIS number, because we have cases where persons would have just gone to an employer, is employed, they don't have a number, so the contributions come in under the employer's name, and sometimes they come in under the person's middle name, as opposed to the person's first name, basically. We have issues here trying to determine who that person is. In addition to that, we have persons who are married. They're submitting the contributions under their married name, but they never visited the NIS to get their name changed. So in cases like that, the system does not recommend, does not recognize the individual or the contributions coming in under a different name. And those go into a special file until some level of clarification is done. So we advise persons to ensure, should they, are they married, that they bring in their documentation, their birth certificate, their marriage certificate, and their new ID card, so that the necessary changes can be done. Or if possible, do not change your name until that process is completed with your employer, because it creates confusion. So when we're looking for contributions under your name, when you submit the application as one particular name, but you submit it under another name, there's no contributions there. We now have to contact you to find out basically what is happening, or to make a determination as to check the particular file to see where your contributions would have been submitted. So it is advisable that should there be any change, that you visit us. For some reason, everybody goes to the bank, they change their name there, they go to the ID place, they change their name there, but they forget to come to us. So I'm just putting that out there as a reminder. Ensure that you have your changes done with us before you change your information with your employer. And that goes for anyone. If it's a series of divorce and you're changing your name back to your maiden name, that is also recommended, but you need to provide us with the proof.
Okay.
Ms. King-Brathwaite, we'll just take a couple more questions.
Okay, that's fine.
And look to wrap up around 11, and any ones that are unanswered, if anything, we can always liaise with you.
That's fine.
To get things. So Juliana, I'll just let you wrap up with the last couple of questions.
All right, I'm scrolling through trying to find some others.
An interesting question here. Somebody's asking if after 500 payments, whether they can stop making contributions to the fund.
That will not be advised. Those additional calculations still go towards your calculation. For instance, should you become ill after those 500 contributions, those contributions are still going to be necessary in the processing of your short-term benefits. As I said, for persons over pensionable age who will only be contributing towards employment injury, that covers you should you be injured on the job. So it is okay to say to stop at 500 to qualify for a pension, but should you become pregnant or sick or injure yourself on the job, you are still covered for those benefits.
A question on the retirement age. Some person is saying if you decide to work till 67, is there anything that needs to be done from the employer or the employee end?
Okay, for those persons who determine that they would like their pension late, which is say from 68 to 70, they must notify the director in writing of their intention to do so at pensionable age. So at 67, you should write to the director and let him know that you intend to defer your pension to a later date, and that is up to age 70. So that when you submit your application, we have your intention to do so, and we will process it accordingly by applying the 6% for every year you're late. So that is the determination there. You must notify us in writing of your intention to do so at pensionable age.
And where an employee is on sick leave due to injury on the job and gets a benefit from the NIS, but the employer continues to pay that employee while they're off. Does the employee have to return that payment to the employer, or how would that be handled?
As I said, that is the arrangement between the employer and the employee, because usually in cases like that, once a person submits a claim to us, what most employers would do is that they will leave it to the NIS to pay the benefit, and the person will not be paid during that period of time. But if the arrangement is you will continue to receive your salary, and the arrangement is that you will submit whatever you receive from us to the employer, if that is the arrangement, the employee should follow through on that arrangement.
Okay.
But as long as the application is submitted, we are obligated to pay.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We're on the button of 11. And I first want to thank you, Mrs. King-Brathwaite, for a really stellar presentation this morning and for helping us further our understanding or enlightening us where there was no understanding on the NIS scheme, how it works, how our benefits work, and how we can go about getting our pensions. You've really expertly and ably covered the topics and answered our questions quite well. And I really want to thank you and the NIS department for readily agreeing to have this session with us this morning. I also want to thank our SITS personnel, Eugene Samuel for the technical assistance, and also our own Yvette Estwick for her admin assistance in this regard. Thank you all for coming, staff. It has been very well subscribed, and we have recorded it. So we'll try to make that recording available for persons who could not make it, and also for those of you who might want to re-listen to anything that was said this morning. But thanks for everyone. Thank you again, Mrs. King-Brathwaite, and thank you, staff and personnel here at CAFO campus. Thank you, Bursar.
All right, thank you for having me.
Very
You're
much.
welcome.